My name is Monica Gleberman, and you're listening to Silence on Set podcast. On today's podcast, returning is Meaghan Oppenheimer, the showrunner for Hulu's new hit show, Tell Me Lies, to help break down the season finale. So to go over all of those scenes that you want to know and help answer some of your questions, here's Meaghan Oppenheimer. I wanted to ask you first off, obviously you adapted it from the book, and I know that you were talking about different aspects that you brought into it, and originally we spoke about the powerful women and how accurate the sex scenes were, and just like a lot of things that you put in that's from a woman's voice, which was so nice. When you get to the material where you have to finish out a season, hopefully there'll be a second season, but when you have to finish out a season, how do you adapt that material? Do you go back to it? Are you so far away from it at that point that you're just in the writer's room writing something different? What do you do to kind of wrap it up the show?
When I pitched the show, I had to give kind of an overview of the whole season in my initial pitch because they were really wanting to know like what would your version of the show be, not just the pilot. What does the season look like? What even did maybe 3 seasons look like? So I had to pitch the whole first season, and so a lot of what you see in the finale was already in the outline from the beginning before I'd even started the writer's room. And then once I had gotten the job and written the pilot, I had to do basically like a series Bible, like a mini Bible. It's called a format before they would greenlight a room. So I was able to do it that way and have the end. I think it would be very hard to start a writer's room and not know what you're writing towards. I mean, I actually can't imagine that. That sounds really stressful to just be like going continually. So, but when I was initially coming up with the season, I really tried not to worry so much about, forcing myself to stay true to the book. It really was a case by case thing of what works best. And that's what's going to, in my opinion, what works best, whether or not it's what happened in the book. Because the book is amazing, but it's such a different platform. It's a book, you're reading it. And I knew it needed to be more of a cliffhanger and, something that would hopefully make people want a season 2.
The whole time, I'm like, everybody is like, oh, Steven, we hate on Steven. Now I feel bad because then we see a switch in Lucy. And I was like, oh my gosh, this whole time we're blaming just him. Poor
Yeah.
Jackson took that hit for like a long time until it switches. So for
Yeah.
you, what was that like in terms of crafting Lucy? Because we were trying to do, like, me and Grace were going back and forth with like ideas of what we thought in terms of how she becomes manipulative. Is it because of her relationship with Steven? Is it because that was how she was and she takes advantage of it because of the situation? Like, it's just the tables turn so much. I mean, literally, I would say what, like, after episode 7, I guess, is like the biggest movement
Yeah.
that to a serious extreme in terms of her manipulation.
I think that Steven is naturally manipulative, and I don't think that Lucy actually is. I think it is a result of the relationship and the dynamic and Steven's influence. I don't think she's perfect on her own. I think she is someone who is a product of a lot of trauma and a family that does not talk to each other honestly. And I think if you grow up in a family like that and you're guarded, it changes the way you communicate. And I think that is something she was always dealing with, was just being closed off and having walls and not trusting people. And when you don't trust people, you don't treat them that well, because even subconsciously you're thinking, well, everyone's going to hurt me, so I can hurt them first. But I don't think she was a naturally manipulative, mean person. I think she's in a situation where he is gaslighting her so successfully, and she's so addicted to him. And I think emotion and delusion are very, very powerful things. And I think she's genuinely operating at all times from the belief, even if deep down she knows, but I think consciously she believes she's maybe doing something bad, but she's doing it for the right reason. Like, she really believes that Drew is responsible for all these things. Because if you look at what Steven is saying to her, of course she's going to. And she wants to believe Steven because the other option is, if she were to accept what he is, she would have to leave him, and she's not strong enough to do that at that point. Yeah, but it was really fun. We always, we'd mapped out her arc. When we mapped out the season from the beginning on the board in the room, we did it by character initially. We mapped each character's arc out on their own. And then we had Stephen and Lucy's relationship as like a character almost. And then we interwove all of it. So we knew that Lucy was going to go dark. I felt like she needed to. I didn't want her to just be like a victim the whole season. She needed to get, you drink the poison and you become poisonous,
Yeah, well, what was so nice was that you got to see Lucy. Yeah, she becomes manipulative, but it's a different aspect of her. But then in the same aspect, it's a flip of a coin because now you're seeing Steven completely different. Because
Hmm.
he's a little bit more drawn in and he is a little more tamed because she finds out this information that he was involved in the accident. So he is a little more like, yes, yes, uh-huh, yep, I'll do whatever you want. And it's kind of a little bit of the tables have turned in their relationship. So I'm sure as actors, that's probably fun to play because it was so strongly different. So like the first half is so different than the second half in the way that they kind of portrayed all that.
Yeah, I think they both had a lot of fun doing that. I think Grace was very excited to go dark. I have to say, the first cut of that episode 8, where she starts to go dark, when it was first handed to me before I started working on it, it was so dark that I was like, we gotta bring this up. Like, I was like, oh, Grace had fun doing this. Grace is enjoying being the bad guy for a minute.
I totally loved it. And I feel like, some people it was very interesting too. A lot of times when I ask questions, one of the biggest questions I got asked was, is it bad that we're rooting for Lucy and Steven? And I was like, that's such an interesting question because we keep kind of joking and it is true. I mean, they're toxic, right? And it's not the best relationship, obviously, but do kind of root for them. Like I did kind of root for them and I can't help it. So, do you think it's bad that we are rooting for these two people that really probably shouldn't be together?
No, I mean, I'm not ever going to judge the audience for, I think we knew that some people would and some people wouldn't. And I think that's the beauty of it. And I think that's why these kinds of relationships happen, because there is something, anything you buy into, there's obviously something you're getting out of it. And that chemistry is undeniable. And I think Jackson and Grace as actors have such incredible chemistry that how could some people not? But I'm happy to hear that because the response I've gotten such an amazing response, but everyone seems horrified by their relationship.
Really?
So the fact that
Oh my
anyone is like rooting for them, I'm like, okay. But as long as people know that this is not something to aspire to in real life,
god.
and I think maybe if they're rooting for them, they're also rooting for them to like be better, which I think so that's okay. As long as they're not like, I want to go find Stephen DeMarco. This is what I want in my life. That would be bad.
Think nobody probably wants that. I think what I do agree with you. I think it's more of like the chemistry and we just like them and you're just like I just want Steven to be better and be a good person for her and I just want her to be a good person for him and like I just want it to work out so bad and I think that's what we were all kind of like striving for and obviously that's not real life. So I love that that's not what happens at all like for the rest of the season. But I think it was an interesting way of getting there. You shook me when the episode airs, when Steven is in the room and he's talking to Diana. She's offering so much more to him. He sees an opportunity and literally in a split second changes his mind, walks out, basically breaks up with Lucy, no word, no conversation, nothing. She's like, what the F happened? We're all like, I was like, literally, my mouth was open. What was your response in terms of watching it and how well done? I mean, like, they walk out and that slow motion shot you did with the music playing, it was so good because, like, I just felt it. Like, I was like, oh, like, how awful that would have been if I was standing there just seeing him just walk right out.
I don't have like a response initially because I'm like involved in every single second of the editing process. So the initial version of that scene, I had imagined it very differently initially in my head. And then that happens a lot when you actually get the dailies back or you're in the edit room and you cut it together. You're like, oh wait, okay, for whatever reason, it's not how I imagined it. So something has to shift. And I thought of that moment as being a lot more somber
Mhm.
and a little bit sadder because it is obviously a devastating moment for Lucy. And when it was first, the very, very rough, first edit of it is given to me, it had more serious music and I was like, oh, I don't know why this isn't quite working. And then I said to our editor, because I wanted to use Mr. Brightside earlier in the season, and then I wasn't able to use it. And it was one of the songs I was like, oh, I don't think we're ever going to get a chance to use that song. And I'm so bummed out because it's so of the era. And then I was just like, Julie, will you just like play Mr. Brightside over this footage and like see what I was like? And I remember being like, I know this is crazy. This is not going to work. I just like, I just want to see. And then she did it. And we were all just sitting there and she was like, I think that's like perfect. And we immediately were like, we have to use this song. It changed, but it did it's so interesting how music can change everything without changing a single frame. Because it made it a lot more gleeful. But I do love that scene. I giggle maliciously every time I watch it now. Because it feels wicked, it feels evil. But also Lucy's behaved really badly, and I think you kind of feel good for Diana getting the last laugh in that moment because Lucy's really been quite mean to her. Not that we don't love Lucy, but she kind of had it coming.
Yeah, it is a very sinister moment. I started laughing after I saw it and I started thinking about it, I was like, Megan's at home going like this, like like I can't wait for everyone to
Really
see it because
giggle.
it is. It's like such
I
a sinister moment.
I giggle every time. I've seen it now a million times because in the edit you watch everything a million times. But I every time I still laugh.
So that moment shocked me, and I'm like, all right, I don't Megan can't shock me any further because I'm like, that's crazy. And I know we're gonna go back to the wedding, right? So I'm like waiting and I'm like, all right, I'm prepped. It's gonna be awkward. It's probably gonna be some weird cliffhanger. Like I'm all prepared. What? What did you do to me? So, he walks in, says that he has a fiance, and I'm like, wait, what? And I'm like, I'm so confused. And then he goes, yeah, yeah. And she's like, excited to see you. And you did such a good job. Cause I'm going, all right, we're gonna see Diana. This sucks. Like, oh my God. And then in walks her best friend that she's known forever. Like, what? How did that happen? And I also want to specifically ask you too. So not only was that like I literally the moment I think I messaged everybody was like I'm totally shook and like I couldn't get it out of my brain for like days. Like seriously, like I just kept
Oh my
thinking.
god.
So I want to ask you about that in particular, making that decision. But then also there's a specific shot where you have the two characters, women, standing and he's in the middle. And the way
Mhm.
that he's looking to me was of anger, that I'm still mad. Now, whether it's we haven't seen a lot of years and more things that happened because it was her freshman year, or whether he's still upset as to what happened, as to what we have seen, I just
Mhm.
felt like the look was that of anger and like, like this is your friend. Like I'm so excited to like bring this in front of you with his look. So I wanted to ask you about those like two specific moments.
The Lydia twist was something that I put in my original pitch before I had the job. I knew I wanted to end the pitch with something shocking that would leave it open to, because everyone always wants something that makes people want a season two. And I was just thinking, like, what could he possibly do that he hasn't done? Because anyone else, if he were to, you realize he slept with them, you'd be like, okay, I'm surprised, but maybe you could have predicted it. But he's never interacted with Lydia. And so it just felt like the perfect thing to do. And also, what's the biggest betrayal Lucy could possibly have? And I think she has damaged her own friendships so much. That's such a thread in the whole season, but definitely the second half of the season. And that loneliness. So I think, yeah. I think though that in terms of him looking at them, any emotion from any of them, from Lucy or him, it's not going to be in reaction to what we saw at the end of the finale, because that's not the last time they saw each other. That's just one chapter of their relationship. And I'm hoping it was clear in the finale that they've seen each other since then and they've had many more entanglements. And because they say, like, I haven't seen him in 4 years, and the freshman year is like 7 years before. So there were still those other 3 years that we haven't seen yet. And
Right.
hopefully get to explore in a second season. But in terms of whether he was looking angry or not, It's funny. I wasn't really sure what Jackson was doing in that moment. It was like very weird and bizarre, which is what I love about Jackson a lot. I'm like, what the fuck is he doing? But I love it because that's like Steven. But I remember we were just like that shot. It was accidental that he kind of got in the middle and was looking like such a creep. And we were like, we have to use that because like, what the fuck is that? And but I don't know if it's anger so much though, as much as they are constantly in a game and you realize like that game is just not over. Anger specifically, they're always going to be trying to one up each other.
I mean, that shot, it was beautiful. I know Jackson, it drives me nuts, and I tell him all the time because I never know what's going on. Like, I'm like, I don't know if that's a good thing, bad thing, what he's thinking. He's so good at like playing just straight. So when I saw that look, I just wasn't sure. Like, I was like, like I'm not sure if he's meant, but he's looking at her.
He's such a watcher of people, and I think he's always looking for what effect is this happening? Is this having on someone? Because he can't help himself. Everyone's a pawn to him.
So what are you expecting? I mean, like fans are gonna freak out. Everyone's gonna like scream when that episode airs. So I guess are you prepared? And then also the biggest question, obviously, I know you don't know yet, but are we gonna get a season two? What do we do to get a season two? Because everyone just asks me literally every day. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't
They
know.
need to keep watching, get their friends to watch. Right now it's looking very positive, but I do not know yet. It's still up in the air. I hope that we'll know in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I think it really depends how, we've been getting more views and our audience is growing steadily each week, which is great, but we are definitely a smaller show. We don't have, some huge celebrity in it. We don't have aliens or murder or, anything like that. We're not Game of Thrones. So we're a smaller show, but we are definitely finding our audience. And the audience that we have is very, very vocal and very passionate, which is amazing. So I think word of mouth is really important. Just continuing to get those numbers up. And yeah, just, but I do think, I hope that people are loud after the finale. I think people will have some kind of reaction. I mean, I know everyone in post did. When I handed that episode to the sound team, they were all, because they were like our first audience every time. They hadn't they hadn't read anything, they hadn't seen anything, and I would edit an episode with the editor for a few weeks, and then I hand it over to the sound team to work on it, and they were always like, "What the fuck?" And they were aghast at. They were horrified about the Evan reveal.
Oh, yes, I know. Oh my gosh. Because even in that episode when she says we both haven't been good friends to her, and I was like, how has Lucy not been a good friend to her? And then I was like, oh,
And
that's
that little look between Evan and Lucy that's in the first scene in the pilot, it's tiny if you miss it, but I think when you watch it back, you're like, oh, like that little look between them, they have secrets. Yeah, I'm worried that people are gonna be really pissed about Evan because people love Evan and Bree. I feel like the Grinch who stole Christmas. Like I just put a dagger in it, but it'll be okay. He's a good guy ultimately.
he's such a good guy. I don't think anything could like ruin
And
that.
Brandon, the actor, is such a good guy. He's like the nicest fucking person in the world. He's such a good guy. Everyone loves him. I got people on set would always be like, "Guy who plays Evan is so nice," and I'm like, "I know he really is." Yeah, they all did such a great job. We got so lucky with this cast. There isn't like a weak link. They're all so amazing, and they're all fun. And yeah, we all really hope we get a season two. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, he didn't come across like that at all. Because I actually he is so nice and the character's so great that I didn't even think anything negatively about him. It just made sense because of the situation. But in terms of like long term, yeah, I wasn't even mad at him at all. It was more, I think like the shock that you put in there at the end just kind of takes over everything else anyway. So I'm expecting like Twitter, everything to just freak out like the second that airs.
I think people will have strong feelings for sure. I hope people don't hate me for it, but I'm very, very excited. I think everyone did such a great job on the finale. So on all the episodes, we just got so lucky. Everyone's so good.
Hope you guys enjoyed listening to showrunner Meaghan Oppenheimer break down that epic season finale of Tell Me Lies. We're all hoping for a season two, so make sure you head over to social and do hashtag renew Tell Me Lies or hashtag Tell Me Lies Season 2. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you're updated on all of our latest podcasts, and head over to our YouTube channel, hit subscribe so you're updated on all of our video content.